Well, hello and welcome to this English lesson about the future. I do have to tell you, though, this is not a grammar lesson. This is a lesson where I'm going to talk about what life might look like in 5 years, in 10 years, or even further into the future. So I know when you look at the title slide, it says the future. I think some of you maybe thought this was going to be about the future tense, but this is actually going to be about the future. So we're going to talk about the future. We're going to talk about what life might look like in the future. So I have a few slides ready to talk about the future. Some of the things I talk about may seem hard to believe, and some of the things that I talk about might already exist in some small form. So the first thing I want to talk about is space tourism. So right now, if you want to visit another country, you can get on an airplane and you can fly there and you can enjoy that country. In the future, we may have space tourism in addition to normal tourism. Space tourism really excites me, believe it or not. I would love to go to space. And in some small form, space tourism is already being talked about. They are thinking about allowing people who have lots of money. Of course, rich people always get to do the fun things first. They are thinking of allowing people with lots of money to take a rocket or spaceship into orbit around the Earth. So in the future, we might see space tourism become a reality. When you say that something will become a reality, it means it will become normal. So space tourism might be normal in the future. Who knows? Maybe you in your lifetime will be able to go into orbit, or maybe even visit the moon, or maybe visit Mars. It sounds hard to believe, doesn't it? But who knows? It could become a reality. Again, the phrase to become a reality means for something to exist. When I was a kid, I watched a lot of cartoons, and in the cartoons, it would take place in the future. That means the cartoon was telling a story that happened far in the future, and they would always have a flying car. And they also said when I was a kid in the 70s, I was a kid in the 70s, for those of you trying to figure out my age, that we would all have flying cars someday. But we don't. This did not ever become a reality. But someday, maybe there will be flying cars. Let me just, give me a sec here. I'm going to check the audio just to make sure everything is working good. Yes, good. So the flying car never really was invented. Maybe someday in the future there will be flying cars, but there certainly are a lot of drones. Drones are small little machines that you can fly around. They have 4 propellers, and you can use them to take pictures. So we'll see. The other thing that might become a reality, something that might be invented, would be something that's called a hologram. A hologram is when instead of looking at something flat on a screen, like the screens behind me, you would see something in 3 dimensions. Right now, when you watch a soccer game or football game on the TV, it's on a flat, sorry, you can't see it's on a flat screen. But in the future, you might be able to watch it where you can actually see it from all 3 sides. It would be in 3 dimensions, or it would be 3-dimensional. I really hope that holograms become a reality. I think it would be very, very cool to be able to see things in 3 dimensions when you want to watch them. In fact, maybe my live streams someday will be holograms. Maybe you'll be able to sit on different sides and see me as if you are actually in the classroom. Maybe I will just be a hologram sitting in your house teaching you English. That would be very, very cool. Of course, we do already have rockets, so this is a rocket. I did want to put this slide in here, though, because the rockets that we use now might get bigger, and the rockets that we use now have already become reusable. A reusable rocket can take off, but later that rocket can come back down and land again. A company called SpaceX has rockets that can go into space, and then they can return and they can land and they can be used again. So rockets are already something that we have, but they might become quite a bit more common in the future. I don't think we'll ever have our own personal rocket. The way you own a car, I don't think you'll own a rocket someday, but who knows? Hey, I do want to pause and say hi to all the people who are watching. Thank you so much for being here. It's awesome that you are here learning just a little bit of English with me. After rockets, they might build things called starships. A starship would be a larger rocket that's built to go from Earth to other planets or to other star systems. I don't know how much you know about space, but we live, the sun is the star in our solar system. We might eventually someday build starships and use those ships to travel to other solar systems, to other star systems. So a starship is simply a larger rocket or a larger spaceship that's made to go between the stars. So someday we might have those. And we might someday live on the moon. Someday they might build a base on the moon. A moon base would be a place where you can live if you visited the moon. So they often talk about visiting the moon, but they also talk about starting to build habitats or places to live on the moon and building a base. You are probably already familiar with the word base when we talk about military bases. Sometimes the army will have a base. They will have a military base. That is the place where all of the soldiers live. Someday we might build a base on the moon, and it would be called a moon base. And then someday we might have interplanetary travel. So a planet, we live on the planet Earth. Mars is a planet as well. When you travel between planets, it's called interplanetary travel. So someday you might be able to go to Mars. You might be able to take an interplanetary trip, and you might be able to travel from one planet to another. We'll see. Who knows whether any of this will be invented. By the way, I do want to stop here and say, I really hope most of these things get invented. I know I'm probably too old to enjoy some of the things that I'm talking about today, but I really hope that someday we are able to experience travel between planets. I just think it would be amazing. We might also have interstellar travel. So interplanetary travel would be travel between the planets in our solar system. Interstellar travel would be travel between the stars. So if we could travel to our closest star, we would say that that is interstellar travel. And then if we do eventually get there, we might do what's called terraforming. So terraforming is when you take a planet, like the planet on the far left. I don't know if that's left or right. It's when you take a planet and you use scientific techniques to change the planet to become more like Earth. So you know that Earth is also called terra firma, and terra means Earth. When you say you are terraforming something, it means you are making it like the Earth. So there is something called the speed of light. The sun puts out light, and I think it takes 8 minutes for that light to arrive at Earth. And one of the things that you often see in a science fiction movie or read about in a science fiction novel is something called faster than light travel. That's when we build spaceships that can go faster than the speed of light. We also just refer to it as FTL. So we'll say FTL. I don't think we'll be able to do this. Okay, I don't think we'll be able to build spaceships that go faster than the speed of light. I think if we ever did, it would be amazing. It would be a miracle. But currently, I don't think it is possible. But you need to think, in the past, there is something, they were able to make airplanes that go faster than the speed of sound. So interestingly enough, we broke the sound barrier. I'm wondering if maybe I should start thinking we can also go faster than light someday. We'll see. I really don't think it's possible. I actually think it's science fiction. So I wanted to mention science fiction because when you talk about the future, some of the things you talk about are very easy to believe. You can think, yeah, we might have that in the future. Oh, that seems totally possible. Oh, I think someday that will be a reality. But some things, when you talk about the future, seem like science fiction. Science fiction is a genre of story about the future that doesn't exist yet. So if you've ever watched Star Wars, that is a science fiction movie. If you have watched the show Star Trek, that is a science fiction television show. And sometimes in those movies or those shows, you see things that you think that could totally be a reality someday. They might actually invent that. And sometimes you see things and you think, no, that will never, ever be a reality. It's science fiction. We already have AI right now, and we do refer to artificial intelligence by using the acronym AI. So in your computer, you have a little bit of AI. When you use the internet, when you do a search, there is an artificial intelligence. There is some software that helps you do the search, and we would call it AI. Right now, AI is not very powerful. We do not have artificial intelligence that's smarter than a human being. We have not created thinking machines that are smarter than people. But we do have a little bit of AI. And in the future, there may be a lot more artificial intelligence. There might just be a lot more machines that can do some thinking for people. Let's see here. Some things we might not have in the future. And this goes back to the question earlier about COVID. There's a possibility that there will be no disease. When people think about the future, they like to think about a future where bad things don't happen anymore. So in the future, there might be no disease. That is very much a possibility. We may develop ways to simply be healthy all the time. It's possible that there will be no poverty. Right now in the world, we have very rich people and we have very poor people, and we have people all along the, sorry, I forgot the word all of a sudden. We have people all along the spectrum, okay? So we have very poor people and we have very rich people and we have all kinds of people in between. But in the future, there might be no poverty. We might get to a time in the future where there are no poor people. If you don't know what the word poverty is, poverty simply describes people who are poor, okay? So in the future, there might be no poverty. That would be really, really cool. There might be no hunger. Right now in the world, just as we have poor people and we have wealthy people, there also are people who have lots of food, and there are people that don't have very much food and they go hungry. That's how we describe it. There are countries that have lots of food, and there are countries that don't have very much food. And hopefully in the future, there will be no hunger. That would be really, really nice if everyone on the planet was able to have food all the time. And then there might be a time where we have world peace. We still live in a time where countries sometimes go to war against other countries. We live in a time where countries that are beside each other, countries that are neighbors, have really strong borders, and every once in a while there's a little bit of a conflict between those countries. In the future, we might see world peace. World peace would be when every country in the world gets along with every other country. So this would be my biggest wish. I wish we had world peace. It is a very difficult thing to have, though. It's very difficult to get everyone to get along. And the reason I say that is because I'm a dad and I have kids. And for those of you that have children, or if you remember your childhood, you probably fought with your brothers and sisters. And my children sometimes fight. And whenever my children fight, I think this is why we don't have world peace, because people tend to fight with each other quite a bit. My children don't fight a lot, but they do every once in a while. If we had all these things, let me back up. If we had no disease, if we had no poverty, if we had no hunger, and we had world peace, we might call our society a utopia. You may have seen this word before. A utopia is when the world has everything as perfect as it can be. So if we lived in a world with no hunger, no poverty, world peace, no one ever fought, we would call it a utopia. And then this is kind of the opposite a little bit. If we don't get better as a world, we could have what's called an apocalypse. An apocalypse, hopefully this doesn't happen in the future. An apocalypse is when society as we know it, civilization as we know it, ceases to exist. So there might come a time in the future where there is a huge world war. And when the world war is over, we might not go back to normal. We could have a pandemic that's worse than COVID. And all of these things could cause what's called an apocalypse. I hope this never happens. I personally don't think this will ever happen. But there is a possibility that if we had a gigantic world war, or if we had a disease that was really, really bad, that we could end up in a situation. My hope is that we end up with a utopia and that we don't end up having an apocalypse. That would be really, really bad. So I think we should all do what we can to avoid disease. We should do what we can to solve disease as a planet. We should all work together. We should do what we can to solve poverty so that there are no poor people in the world. We should try to end hunger. We should try to make sure the whole world has the food they need, and we should work towards world peace. So I think when I help all of you and I try to be as kind as possible, I hope I'm doing my little part to make the world a better place. That's my wish. Something that we already have today is called virtual reality. You can put on a virtual reality headset like this guy, and you can see things around you as if you are in a pretend world or a fictional world. Oh, by the way, Kim, thank you so much for the super sticker. That is very awesome of you. Thank you so much for doing that. I very much appreciate it. So someday you might come to one of my live streams using virtual reality. Right now, I am on your screen. You are either using your phone or your laptop or computer. But someday you might put on a virtual reality headset, and then you might be in a classroom with me virtually. So it would be a computer-generated room where you would actually be in the same room as me. That would be very, very cool. I really hope this technology gets developed in my lifetime. In English, when you say you hope something happens in your lifetime, it means you hope it happens before you die. I hope virtual reality becomes just this really cool and amazing technology, even for things like teaching English. We might have robots in the future. I know we often say we would love to have a robot that would clean our house, but sometime in the future, we might have robots. There might be robots that mow your lawn. There might be robots that clean your house. There might be robots that cook food for you. That would be a cool robot. You would just say to the robot, hey, robot. Well, you would probably give the robot a name, but you would say, hey, robot, can you make me some spaghetti and some vegetables? And then the robot would make you dinner. That would be really cool. We already have this a little bit, but we might see more self-driving cars. I think these are self-driving buses. We might see things like self-driving pizza delivery vehicles. I know they're experimenting with all different types of self-driving cars. We might have self-driving cars. Already, if you have a Tesla, we have what's called autopilot. Autopilot is when you push a button and the car will stay in its lane and it will follow the cars in front of it. But in the future, we might have more of those. We might have cars where you literally don't have to drive at all. You just get in the car and you just say where you want to go and the car takes you there. That would be very, very cool. Nanobots are very, very tiny robots. They think that someday they might build robots that are so tiny that they would be able to go in your bloodstream and fight infection. So yes, Key Park, I don't know. There was just this weird, I think 2 squirrels were fighting outside. I'm not sure. It was very, very distracting. So I closed the window over there. So sorry to leave the live stream for a little bit. Nanobots are very, very tiny robots. Someday we might have nanobots that clean up different kinds of hazardous waste. We might have nanobots that are so small they can actually go in our bloodstream and do surgery from the inside. I'm not sure this will happen, but it would be really, really cool. We might have, just let me have a drink of water here. We might have something someday called a space elevator. So right now, in order to get to space, you need to go in a rocket. The rocket blasts off. That's what we said as kids. The rocket blasts off, or there is a rocket launch and it goes into space. But someday they might actually build a space elevator. We are not able to build this with today's technology, but in the future, you might simply take an elevator to go up to a space station. That would be very, very cool. By the way, I'm not sure if you knew this, but when kids count down, when kids count down like 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and then they yell blast off. I don't know. This is how we always counted as kids. At the end, we always yell blast off because we're kind of talking about rockets. I don't think this will happen. I don't think we will have time travel in the future. Time travel, people have already asked a few questions about time travel. I don't think we'll be able to visit the past or visit the future. I think that there's no way this will ever happen. I think it's a very difficult thing to invent. And I think if we did invent it, there would be a ton of problems with it because everyone would want to travel to the past, and they would want to probably change the past, which I think would be good in some ways, but bad in other ways. We might in the future have more underground cities, and we might have more really tall skyscrapers. So as more and more people inhabit the planet, as the population of the planet continues to increase, we can't keep spreading out on the planet because we need the land to grow food. And so you might see cities start to have buildings that go really high in the air or start to go really deep in the ground. And so you might have what they call underground cities. If you go to Toronto right now, there are huge parts of the city where you can walk underground or above ground. There's a subway. They think that in the future, we might have more cities like that, where there's just a lot of underground areas in the city. We might also have domed cities. A domed city has a large dome over top. If pollution continues to be a problem, if we continue to just pollute and not take good care of the planet, eventually we might have domed cities so that we can control the quality of the air. I don't think this will happen. I hope this doesn't happen. But in the future, there might come a time where we have cities where we need to cover them so that we can keep the air inside very, very clean. I don't know. I think it would be better if we just took care of the planet. I think it would be much better if we just did a really good job. Let's all stop polluting and let's take really good care of the planet. I saw on the news yesterday that China promised that it would reduce its pollution in the next 10 or 20 years to almost zero. That would be really, really cool. There are many nations on the planet. China is not the only one. There are many nations that still have a lot of pollution. The United States, Canada, we are big polluters as well. It would be really cool if we could reduce pollution to zero. Let me just check here. When I was a kid, they said that there would eventually be a 4-day work week. I work 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. When I was in school, when I was a kid, they said in the future, you will only need to work 4 days a week. This never happened. They still talk about the possibility that someday there will be a 4-day work week. I hope there is a 4-day work week sometime in the future. That would be really, really nice. But right now, as it stands, that means currently, there is still a 5-day work week. So we are in a 5-day work week here in Canada. Some people work 6 days a week. I guess if you count the fact that I work on the farm on Saturday and that I do a live stream on Saturday, if you count that as work, I work 6 days a week, but most people in Canada work 5 days a week. The 4-day work week has never started. So let's see here. Teleportation. So this is where you walk in a booth and you disappear and then you appear somewhere else. I don't think this will ever be invented. I really don't. I don't think teleportation will ever work. It works in movies. If you ever watch Star Trek, they have a transporter and the people go in it and then they disappear and then they show up on the planet. I don't think teleportation is ever going to become a reality. I really don't think so. Hey, folks in the chat, I see a lot of people speaking different languages. Please keep the chat only in English or you will get a timeout from Todd or Dave. It's very important that we keep things English only so that everyone who is here to learn English can appreciate it. So yes, so please keep the chat English only. Thank you, Rosita. Make sure chat is English only. And then Todd and Dave, just take the liberty of using the timeout button if you need to time some people out if they can't pay attention. But English only, please. It's very helpful. Are there aliens? So we use the word extraterrestrial life. You can see the word terra in there again a little bit. So extraterrestrial means not from our planet. Okay. So Kim, thank you for helping out there. If you are a member and you understand the language that is being spoken in the chat, feel free to help people understand they should not be speaking in different languages. That's awesome. Extraterrestrial life. I don't think it exists. I know some of you do think it exists. Some of you don't think it exists. I'm not sure. I feel like if there were aliens, if there was extraterrestrial life, I feel like they would have contacted us at some point. But maybe, I don't know. This is a tough one, I think. This is a tough one to decide. Maybe, maybe not. I guess if they ever do contact us, that's when we'll know. But I currently don't think there's extraterrestrial life. And aliens fly in aircrafts called UFOs. Sometimes there is a UFO sighting. So people think that they have seen a UFO, and UFO is short for unidentified flying object. So sometimes people will be in an airplane at night and they'll look out the window and they'll see interesting lights or other things flying, and they think that it might be aliens in their spaceship or UFO. So there are sometimes UFO sightings. I don't think, well, I said already, I don't think there's aliens. So I'm really not thinking there are actually UFOs. So I know some of you believe there's UFOs, some don't. There's no need for us to argue right now. Okay. Cloning. So this is something that actually happens already. The very first animal that was cloned was a sheep named Dolly. So cloning is when you take an animal and you take cells from the animal and you use those cells to basically grow another version of it. Jen and I were having an interesting conversation about cloning because Oscar is a really nice dog. By the way, if you watch my video on my second channel today, Oscar walks across in the background. Let me just do something for a second here. He walks across in the background. I put a link in the chat, by the way. We were talking about Oscar's so nice. If you could pay to have Oscar cloned, would you have a clone made of him? And I'm not sure. It's interesting to think about. Anyways, if you want to see Oscar, Nightbot just shared a link to a video on my second channel. Oscar does walk by in that video. I'm not sure. I like Oscar a lot. I think if it was reasonable, I might pay to have him cloned. I don't know.